Hare Krishna. Welcome back, everybody. Yesterday we had a very good connection. Hopefully we'll have a good connection again today. We had 4 bars on the phone. Let's see. All right, welcome to everyone in outer space, cyberspace. Welcome to the live studios, Radha Lane, where the Bhagavatam is being read every single day without fail. And so we're all very fortunate to be here together to hear the glories of the Lord and get the association of the pure devotees. All right. So first let's hear Sanatana Goswami's glorification from Srimad-Bhagavatam. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vetaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaikta Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the world. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidwanduditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atini chochatakara hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're continuing to read Srimad-Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 3, in which a summary of Krishna's incarnations in this world have been enumerated, listed, and Krishna has been declared to be the source of them all, even though he appears on the list. Okay, we're now starting with text 35, chapter 3. Thus, learned men describe the births and activities of the unborn and inactive, which is undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. He is the Lord of the heart. Purport: both the Lord and the living entities are essentially all spiritual. Therefore, both of them are eternal, and neither of them has birth and death. The difference is that the so-called births and disappearances of the Lord are unlike those of the living beings. The living beings who take birth and then again accept death are bound by the laws of material nature. But the so-called appearance and disappearance of the Lord are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. They are described by the great sages for the purpose of self-realization. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord that his so-called birth in the material world and his activities are all transcendental. And simply by meditation on such activities, one can attain realization of Brahman and thus become liberated from material bondage. In the Shrutis, it is said that the birthless appears to take birth. The Supreme has nothing to do, but because he is omnipotent, everything is performed by him naturally, as if done automatically. As a matter of fact, the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his different activities are called confidential, even to the Vedic literatures. Yet they are displayed by the Lord to bestow mercy upon the conditioned souls. We should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form. Text 36. The Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of the 6 senses and is fully omnipotent with 6 opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them, and annihilates them without being in the least affected. He is within every living being and is always independent. Purport. The prime difference between the Lord and the living entities is that the Lord is the creator and the living entities are the created. Here he is called the Amoga Lila, which indicates that there is nothing lamentable in his creation. Those who create disturbance in his creation are themselves disturbed. He is transcendental to all material afflictions because he is full with all 6 opulences, namely wealth, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. And thus he is the master of the senses. He creates these manifested universes in order to reclaim the living beings who are within them suffering threefold miseries, maintains them, and in due course annihilates them without being the least affected by such actions. He is connected with this material creation very superficially, as one smells odor without being connected with the odorous article. Non-godly elements, therefore, can never approach him despite all endeavors. Same place we read that. Didn't we read that?
Yeah,
We did.
we stopped at 38 actually.
Oh, really? Okay, anyway, never hurts to hear it again, and again and again. Text 37. The foolish, with the poor fund of knowledge, cannot know that the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words. Purport. No one can properly describe the transcendental nature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore it is said that he is beyond the expression of mind and speech. And yet there are some men with a poor fund of knowledge who desire to understand the Absolute Truth by imperfect mental speculation and faulty description of his activities. To the layman, his activities, appearance and disappearance, his names, his forms, his paraphernalia, his personalities, and all things in relation with him are mysterious. There are 2 classes of materialists, namely the fruitive workers and the empiric philosophers. The fruitive workers have practically no information of the Absolute Truth, and the mental speculators, after being frustrated in fruitive activities, turn their faces towards the Absolute Truth and try to know him by mental speculation. And for all these men, the Absolute Truth is a mystery, as the jugglery of a magician is a mystery to children. Being deceived by the jugglery of the Supreme Being, the non-devotees, who may be very dexterous in fruitive work and mental speculation, are always in ignorance. With such limited knowledge, they are unable to penetrate into the mysterious speculators, into the mysterious region of transcendence. The mental speculators are a little more progressive than the gross materialists or the fruitive workers. But because they are also within the grip of illusion, they take it for granted that anything which has a form, a name, and activities is but a product of material energy. For them, the Supreme Spirit is formless, nameless, and inactive. And because such mental speculators equalize the transcendental name and form of the Lord with mundane names and form, they are in fact in ignorance. With such a poor fund of knowledge, there is no access to the real nature of the Supreme Being. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is always in a transcendental position, even when he is within the material world. But ignorant men consider the Lord one of the great personalities of the world, and thus they are misled by the illusory energy. Text 38. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the Creator of the universe in his full glory, power, and transcendence. Purport. Only the pure devotees can know the transcendental name, form, and activities of Lord Krishna, due to their being completely freed from the reactions of fruitive work and mental speculation. The pure devotees have nothing to derive as personal profit from their unalloyed service to the Lord. They render favorable service to the Lord incessantly and spontaneously, without any reservation. Everyone within the creation of the Lord is rendering service to the Lord indirectly or directly. No one is an exception to this law of the Lord. Those who are rendering service indirectly, being forced by the illusory agent of the Lord, are rendering service unto him unfavorably. But those who are rendering service unto him directly, under the direction of his beloved agent, are rendering service unto him favorably. Such favorable servitors are devotees of the Lord, and by the grace of the Lord, they can enter into the mysterious region of transcendence by the mercy of the Lord. But the mental speculators remain in darkness all the time. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself guides the pure devotees toward the path of realization due to their constant engagement in the loving service of the Lord in spontaneous affection. That is the secret of entering into the kingdom of God. Fruitive activities and speculation are no qualifications for entering. Text 39. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantee 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. Purport. The inquiries of the sages headed by Shaunaka are herewith praised by Sutta Goswami on the merit of their transcendental nature. As already concluded, only the devotees of the Lord can know him to a considerable extent, and no one else can know him at all. So the devotees are perfectly cognizant of all spiritual knowledge. The personality of Godhead is the last word in absolute truth. Impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma, Supersoul, are included in the knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, his multipotencies and his expansions. So the devotees are congratulated as being all successful. A cent% devotee of the Lord is immune to the dreadful material miseries of repeated birth and death. Text 40. This is a famous verse. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samitam Uttamat Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishihi Nishriyasya Lokasya Dhanyam Swastyayanam Mahat. This scripture, named Srimad-Bhagavatam, is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that Srimad-Bhagavatam is the spotless sound representation of all Vedic knowledge and history. There are selected histories of great devotees who are in direct contact with the personality of Godhead. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Lord Sri Krishna and is therefore non-different from him. Srimad-Bhagavatam should be worshipped as respectfully as we worship the Lord. Thereby we can derive the ultimate blessings of the Lord through its careful and patient study. As God is all light, all bliss, and all perfection, so also is Srimad-Bhagavatam. We can have all the transcendental light of the Supreme Brahman, Sri Krishna, from the recitation of Srimad-Bhagavatam, provided it is received through the medium of the transparent spiritual master. Lord Chaitanya's private secretary, Srila Sarupa Damodar Goswami, advised all intending visitors who came to see the Lord at Puri to make a study of the Bhagavatam from the person Bhagavatam. Person Bhagavatam is the self-realized bona fide spiritual master, and through him only can one understand the lessons of Bhagavatam in order to receive the desired result. One can derive from the study of the Bhagavatam all benefits that are possible to be derived from the personal presence of the Lord. It carries with it all the transcendental blessings of Lord Sri Krishna that we can expect from his personal contact. Text 41. Srila Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Purport. Men with the poor fund of knowledge only accept the history of the world from the time of Buddha, or since 600 BC. And prior to this period, all histories mentioned in the scriptures are calculated by them to be only imaginary stories. That is not a fact. All the stories mentioned in the Puranas and Mahabharata, etc., are actual histories, not only of this planet, but also of millions of other planets within the universe. Sometimes the history of planets beyond this world appear to such men to be unbelievable, but they do not know that different planets are not equal in all respects, and that therefore some of the historical facts derived from other planets do not correspond with the experience of this planet. Considering the different situation of different planets, and also time and circumstances, there is nothing wonderful in the stories of the Puranas, nor are they imaginary. We should always remember the maxim that one man's food is another man's poison. We should not, therefore, reject the stories and histories of the Puranas as imaginary. The great rishis, like Vyasa, had no business putting some imaginary stories in their literatures. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, historical facts selected from the histories of different planets have been depicted. It is therefore accepted by all the spiritual authorities as the Mahapurana. The special significance of these histories is that they are all connected with activities of the Lord in a different time and atmosphere. Srila Shukadeva Goswami is the topmost personality of all these self-realized souls, and he accepted this as the subject of studies from his father, Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva is the great authority, and the subject matter of Srimad-Bhagavatam being so important, he delivered the message first to his great son, Srila Shukadeva Goswami. It is compared to the cream of the milk. Vedic literature is like the milk ocean of knowledge. Cream or butter is the most palatable essence of milk. Memo to the vegans. For it contains all palatable, instructive, and authentic versions of different activities of the Lord and his devotees. There is no gain, however, in accepting the message of Bhagavatam from the unbelievers, atheists, and professional reciters who make a trade of Bhagavatam for the layman. It was delivered by Srila Shukadeva Goswami, and he had nothing to do with the Bhagavata business. He did not have to maintain family expenses by such trade. Srimad-Bhagavatam should therefore be received from the representative of Shukadev, who must be in the renounced order of life without family encumbrance. Milk. Haribol Sarva. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Haribol. Milk is undoubtedly very good and nourishing, but when it is touched by the mouth of a snake, it is no longer nourishing. Rather, it becomes a source of death. Similarly, those who are not strictly in the Vaishnava discipline should not make a business of this Bhagavatam and become a cause of spiritual death for so many hearers. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that the purpose of all the Vedas is to know Him, Lord Krishna. And Srimad-Bhagavatam is Lord Sri Krishna Himself in the form of recorded knowledge. Therefore, it is the cream of all the Vedas, and it contains all historical facts of all times in relation with Sri Krishna. It is factually the essence of all histories. Text 42. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn delivered the Bhagavatam to the great emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death without taking food or drink. Purport. All transcendental messages are received properly in the chain of disciplic succession. This disciplic succession is called parampara. Unless, therefore, Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literatures are received through the parampara system, the reception of knowledge is not bona fide. Vyasadeva delivered the message to Shukadeva Goswami, and from Shukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami received the message. One should therefore receive the message of Bhagavatam from Sutta Goswami or from his representative, and not from any irrelevant interpreter. Emperor Parikshit received the information of his death in time, and he at once left his kingdom and family and sat down at the bank of the Ganges to fast till death. All great sages, rishis, philosophers, mystics, and so on, went there due to his imperial position. They offered many suggestions about his immediate duty, and at last it was settled that he would hear from Shukadeva Goswami about Lord Krishna. Thus the Bhagavatam was spoken to him. Sripad Shankaracharya, who preached Mayavada philosophy and stressed the impersonal feature of the Absolute, also at last recommended that one must take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, for there is no hope of gain from debating. Indirectly, Sripad Shankaracharya Shankaracharya admitted that what he had preached in the flowery grammatical interpretations of the Vedanta Sutra cannot help one at the time of death. At the critical hour of death, one must recite the name of Govinda. This is the recommendation of all great transcendentalists. Shukadeva Goswami had long ago stated the same truth, that at the end one must remember Narayana. That is the essence of all spiritual activities. In pursuance of this eternal truth, Srimad-Bhagavatam was heard by Emperor Parikshit, and it was recited by the able Shukadeva Goswami. And both the speaker and the receiver of the messages of Bhagavatam were duly delivered by the same medium. Text 43. Another famous verse. Krishne Sudamo Pagate Dharma Jnanadibi Saha Kalau Nashtadrisham Esha Puranarko Dunoditaha. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it is arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, and so on. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has his eternal Dhamma, or abode, where he eternally enjoys himself with his eternal associates and paraphernalia. And his eternal abode is a manifestation of his internal energy, whereas the material world is a manifestation of his external energy. When he descends on the material world, he displays himself with all paraphernalia in his internal potency, which is called Atma Maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he descends by his own potency, Atma Maya. His form, name, fame, paraphernalia, abode, and so on are not, therefore, creations of matter. He descends to reclaim the fallen souls and to re-establish codes of religion which are directly enacted by him. Except for God, no one can establish the principles of religion. Either he or a suitable person empowered by him can dictate the codes of religion. Real religion means to know God, our relationship with him, and our duties in relation with him, and to know ultimately our destination after leaving this material body. The conditioned souls, who are entrapped by the material energy, hardly know all these principles of life. Most of them are like animals engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. They are mostly engaged in sense enjoyment under the pretension of religiosity, knowledge, or salvation. They are still more blind in the present age of quarrel, or Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, the population is just a royal edition of the animals. They have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge or godly, religious life. They are so blind that they cannot see anything beyond the needs of the body. They have no information of the spirit soul beyond the jurisdiction of the subtle mind, intelligence, or ego, but they are very much proud of their advancement in knowledge, science, and material prosperity. They can risk their lives to become a dog or hog just after leaving the present body, for they have completely lost sight of the ultimate aim of life. The personality of Godhead Sri Krishna appeared before us just a little prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga, and he returned to his eternal home practically at the commencement of Kali Yuga. While he was present, he exhibited everything by his different activities. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita specifically and eradicated all pretentious principles of religiosity. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the message of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And thus, both the... I gotta make my font size a little smaller. That's why I went back in time. I put my font size really big, and then when I opened it up, it was farther back. So where was I exactly? We must therefore accept Srimad-Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. That's where we were? Or was it before? Anyway. Huh? Okay. And prior to his departure from this material world, he empowered Sri Vyasadeva through Narada to compile the messages of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And thus, both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad-Bhagavatam are like the torch-bearers for the blind people of this age. In other words, if men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam, and Srimad-Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life, Lord Sri Krishna, personified. We must therefore accept Srimad-Bhagavatam as the direct representation of Lord Krishna. One who can see Srimad-Bhagavatam can also see Lord Sri Krishna in person. They are identical. Hare Krishna. Text 44. O learned Brahmanas, when Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam, there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention, and thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear this very same thing, as I learned it from him, and as I have realized it. Purport. That means that Sutta Goswami sat there, and he heard 18,000 verses, and he memorized every single one of them perfectly, and he never forgot. That's the standard of the personalities who are passing this literature down to us. Purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Sri Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized great soul like Shukadeva Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earning in sex indulgence. No one can learn Srimad-Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. Nor can one learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Shukadeva Goswami and no one else, if one at all wants to see Lord Sri Krishna in the pages. That is the process, and there is no alternative. Sutta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami because he wants to present the message which he received from the great learned Brahmana. Shukadeva Goswami presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father, and so also Sutta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Shukadeva Goswami. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word nivishta means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of the Bhagavatam through his ears. I'll repeat that. The word nivishta means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and thus he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Sri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. So that solves all the problems. If you can actually be with Krishna while you're reading, then everything else gets put into proper perspective. You know, fear goes away, anxiety goes away, confusion goes away. I mean, it doesn't mean that the material world goes away, and we still have our problems and everything, but we have a whole another level of shelter, a whole another level of solace. Thus, on the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, third chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So we're going to move right into the appearance of Sri Narada. There's one very nice place in one of the purports where Prabhupada says something about Narada, and he said, so we are very pleased to meet Sri Narada, who has mercifully agreed to appear in these pages, on these pages. It means that not just Krishna is personally present, but all these great personalities we're hearing about are personally present in the sound. Okay, chapter 4, the appearance of Sri Narada. Text 1. Sri Vyasadeva said, on hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis, engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shaunaka Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Sutta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad-Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadev Goswami, and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shaunaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Sutta Goswami, simply by his uttering yatha ditam and yatha mati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that its real purpose can be served and Lord Krishna can be realized without difficulty. Unless this situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation will be for ulterior purposes, and such recitation is useless labor, both for the speaker and for the audience. Text 2. Shaunaka said, O Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. please relate the pious message of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami. Purport. Sutta Goswami, Sutta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Shaunak Goswami out of great joy, because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Shukadeva Goswami. They were not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret it in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so-called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so-called learned impersonalists who cannot enter into the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of the Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist views, and the professional readers at once go to the 10th canto to misexplain the most confidential part of the Lord's pastimes. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Shukadeva Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Shukadeva Goswami and his representative are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Text 3. In what period and at what place was this first began? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Purport. Because Srimad-Bhagavatam is the special contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, there are so many inquiries by the learned Shaunaka Muni. It was known to him that Srila Vyasadeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways, up to the Mahabharata, for the understanding of the less intelligent women, Shudras, and fallen members of the family of twice-born men. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant. Text 4. His, Vyasadeva's son, was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist, whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. Purport. Srila Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul, and thus he remained always alert, not to be trapped by the illusory energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated soul and the conditioned souls have different engagements. The liberated soul is always engaged in the progressive path of spiritual attainment, which is something like a dream for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the actual engagements of the liberated soul. While the conditioned soul thus dreams about spiritual engagements, the liberated soul is awake. Similarly, the engagement of a conditioned soul appears to be like a dream for the liberated soul. A conditioned soul and a liberated soul may apparently be on the same platform, but factually they are differently engaged, and their attention is always alert, either in sense enjoyment or in self-realization, respectively. The conditioned soul is absorbed in matter, whereas the liberated soul is completely indifferent to matter. This indifference is explained as follows. Text 5. While Srila Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them, made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, 518 it is said that a learned sage looks equally on a learned and gentle brahmana, a chandala, dog-eater, a cow, a dog, or a cow, due to his spiritual vision. Srila Shukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Thus, he did not see a male or female. He saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor, just as by looking at a child one can understand how innocent he is. Shukadeva Goswami was a young boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Shukadeva Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, the way he looked at them was very innocent, and he had nothing to do with worldly affairs. The ladies, by their special qualifications, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. Srila Vyasadeva was an old man and was fully dressed, and the ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, yet they reacted to his presence according to the social custom because he played the part of a householder. A householder has to distinguish between a male and female, because he cannot be a householder. Otherwise, he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. As long as such attachment is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi, like Shukadeva Goswami. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex, and thus keep one entangled in material existence. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of this spiritual vision is the liberated sage. And Srila Shukadeva Goswami attained that stage. Srila Vyasadeva was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in the householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a matter of custom. Text 6. How was he, Srila Shukadeva, the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapura, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? Purport. The present city of Delhi was formerly known as Hastinapura, because it was first established by King Hasti. Goswami Shukadeva, after leaving his paternal home, was roaming like a madman, and therefore it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. A sage is not therefore recognized by sight, but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu or great sage not to see, but to hear him. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Shukadeva Goswami was a sadhu who could speak on the transcendental activities of the Lord. He did not satisfy the whims of ordinary citizens. He was recognized when he spoke on the subject of Bhagavatam, and he never attempted jugglery like a magician. Outwardly, he appeared to be a retarded, dumb madman, but in fact, he was the most elevated transcendental personality. Text 7. This is getting interesting. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Purport. Srimad-Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story, as it is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is also called Shuka Sangita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Sri Shukadeva Goswami, the great liberated sage. Text 8. He, Shukadeva Goswami, is accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he does this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad-Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly men. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. Text 9. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. Purport. The birth of Maharaj Parikshit is wonderful because in the womb of his mother he was protected by the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. His activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cows means to end human civilization. He wanted to protect the cow from being killed by the great representative of sin. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being, and thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all the days he heard Bhagavatam, he did not take food or drink, nor did he sleep a moment. So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. The desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail. Text 10. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? Purport. Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of the world. In all the seas and oceans, Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of all the world and all the seas and oceans, and he did not have to take the trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers, Maharaj Yudhishthir, and brothers. Besides that, he was doing well in the administration and was worthy of the good names of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause. Text 11. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Purport. There was nothing undesirable in his life. He was quite a young man and could enjoy life with power and opulence. So there was no question of retiring from active life. There was no difficulty in collecting the state taxes because he was so powerful and chivalrous that even his enemies would come to him and bow down at his feet and surrender all wealth for their own benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was a pious king. He conquered his enemies, and therefore the kingdom was full of prosperity. There was enough milk, grains, and metals, and all the rivers and mountains were full of potency. So materially, everything was satisfactory. Therefore, there was no question of untimely giving up his kingdom and life. The sages were eager to hear about all this. Text 12. Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. I'll repeat that again. Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was the shelter for others? Purport. Parikshit Maharaj was an ideal king and householder because he was a devotee of the personality of Godhead. A devotee of the Lord automatically has all good qualifications. And the emperor was a typical example of this. Personally, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession. But since he was king for the all-round welfare of his citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for this life, but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow another to be killed. Memo to Trump. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness, men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. He was not what?
Selfishly interested.
Just checking. See if you were still around, still in the room, not flying around here and there. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self-centered or self-extended. He was neither. His interest was to please the Supreme Truth, the personality of Godhead. The king is the representative of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Therefore the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of God. Hence the activities of the citizens should be so coordinated that they can be at the end, that they can at the end go back to God, home, back to Godhead. Under the administration of a representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that the human beings, as well as the animals, can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbance between one. There cannot, if all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbance between one living being and another. Emperor Parikshit was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign. Text 13. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Paribrajakajas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Paribrajakacharyas, or learned preachers, are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajakacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas who are meant for administrating Vedic rites. Yet it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously, because they are meant for the same end in different ways. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyadina Shruti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Atharva, Rig, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, and so on, are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only differences are that the Vedic mantras mostly begin with the Pranava Omkara, and that it requires some training to pronounce the metrical accent, without which the mantras cannot be successfully chanted. Although Srila Sutta Goswami was a preacher of the first order, he did not bother much about the metrical pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Srila Sutta Goswami is following in his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important, because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chanting. Text 14. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the 4 millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapara, Treta, and Kali. But sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of Vaibhasvata Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the 4 millenniums, and the 3rd millennium appeared prior to the 2nd. In that particular millennium, Lord Sri Krishna also descends, and because of this, there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu, fisherman, and the father was the great Parashara Muni. That is the history of Vyasadeva's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the 3rd sandhya of that particular age. Text 15. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Purport. The river Saraswati is flowing in the Badarikashrama area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Samyaprasa in Badarikashrama, where Sri Vyasadeva is residing. Text 16. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to the unseen force of time. Purport. The great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls, and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus he could see the future anomalies in the Kali age, and accordingly he made arrangement for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge. text 17 and 18. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. Purport. The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they decay all matter in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportions as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally, the duration of life is reduced, the memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on. Being a liberated soul, the great sage Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the future fate of a man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and lunar eclipses, liberated souls can foretell the future of all mankind by seeing through the scriptures. They can see this due to their sharp vision of spiritual attainment. And all such transcendentalists, who are naturally devotees of the Lord, are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is to happen 5 minutes ahead. Memo to Trump. I think we're seeing into the future by the grace of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. In this age, the people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients and TB hospitals, but formerly this was not so because the time was not so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srila Vyasadeva. And yet these selfless workers are always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyasa, Narada, Madhva, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, and so on. They are all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. And that is our mission. That is our mission. And we may not be as qualified and as empowered as these great personalities we are hearing about in this beginning of the Bhagavatam. But by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anyone who sincerely takes this process up and sincerely hears and just repeats, according to one's capacity, can also benefit the whole world, or at least the people that we come in contact with. And if we do that, we become happy. And if we're happy, when people look into your eyes, they know it. Even in the most mundane seeming situations, like traveling, going to check in your bags, and they look and they see these people who are servants for people, doing the services. They can tell the difference. They see so many people, and everybody nowadays is either, ungracious or, or anyway. There was this one point that stuck out in my mind, and I got so absorbed in the reading I forgot what it was. Anyway, let's hear some. We'll stop here. And So the last verse we read was, I'm going crazy over here. 18, right? Correct. Yes. So we'll stop here. Yes, Hannah.
What does Srimad-Bhagavatam mean?
Bhaktin, Hannah. Srimad means auspicious. It means beautiful. Both put together in one. Shri means beautiful. Srimad means auspicious. And Bhagavatam means pertaining to Bhagavan. Pertaining to Bhagavatam, it's the Sanskrit construction of a word. It means pertaining to Bhagavan. Sri Krishna. Pertaining to Sri Krishna. So that means that the Bhagavatam is unique, and we're going to hear about it just in a few verses. We'll hear about it in just a few verses, because Vyasadeva has, he's not the author of the Vedas. Vyasadeva means, or Veda Vyasa means editor. He edited the Vedas. The Vedas came into the universe as one body, one sound, one complete sound. And then it was passed down by, sound, by memory, all the way through from the beginning. And when it comes to Kali Yuga, then because the people they don't have such good memories, in case you didn't notice. All of us have got Kali Yuga memories. Except for rare cases, like Jiva Goswami had the whole Bhagavatam in the hand of his fist, in the fist of his hand. Every single verse. 18,000 verses. You could call any verse, knew every single word, what they meant, how they related to one another, etc., etc., etc. So none of us should be proud if we know a few verses, or we know a little something, Anyway, get back to the track. So, as the Vedic knowledge became disseminated throughout the universe, various branches of it came into being. The Upanishads were. Anyway, I'm giving you a whole summary. I may be giving you too much.
No, I wrote that yesterday.
You wrote what yesterday? Branches. So I said it yesterday?
We read it. I just wrote it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So Vedavyas wrote all these things. They came out of his pen, and he actually was the author of two literatures. The Mahabharata, and he's the author of the Mahabharata and the Vedanta Sutra, which is a summary of all of the Upanishads and Vedas. And he still wasn't satisfied. It's very unusual. I mean, that's a huge, huge endeavor, what he did. So then, just as he was feeling dissatisfied, Narada Muni shows up, and we're going to hear about this pretty soon, just in a few verses. And as soon as he saw Narada, because Narada is his spiritual master, even though Vyasadeva isn't a literary incarnation, I mean an incarnation of God to edit the Vedas and give the Bhagavatam, he wasn't satisfied. And he needed a spiritual master, so Narada Muni was his spiritual master. Even Krishna accepts a spiritual master. It's the system. It's the transcendental system. It's the way knowledge comes down to us, transcendental knowledge. So then Narada says, are you satisfied to teach people, that they're their bodies? Because, all the Vedas and all the Mahabharata and all these things are stories of kings and, intrigue and so many things, romance and, politics and social upheaval and all these things. He said, the reason you're despondent is because you haven't focused on pure devotional service to Krishna. So I want you to do that. That will satisfy you. So then Vedavyas goes into trance. Now this is the function of the original rishis. There are different kinds of rishis, but the original rishis could, in meditation, bring mantras or Vedas or literatures that are not yet come into the world through their hearts. So he did that. He went into meditation and he saw Krishna, he saw himself, he saw the material energy, and then he saw the Bhagavatam. And then he wrote it down. Well, I think he didn't really write it down. It appeared in his heart, and then he gave it to Shukadev Goswami. Later on it was written down. Much later, much later it was written down. Yes.
It always amazes me.
This is Krishna Kripa speaking, and he's always amazed about something or another. It always amazes you.
But in the beginning of this chapter.
But he actually knows everything. In the beginning of this chapter.
It's a burden. Never mind. But anyway, how the sages are questioning. How is it that...
In the beginning of the chapter, when the sages are, at the beginning of the book, the sages are questioning.
Well, this chapter particularly, how is it that Maharaj Parikshit would be willing to just...
Oh, how was it that Maharaj Parikshit would be willing to just surrender?
Because actually he's properly situated.
Because he's actually properly situated. Yeah, he was a great king, and he was a great leader, and he was a great father, practically, of all the living beings underneath him, and they were all happy underneath his. So he was doing good to others. So the question is, why would he choose to leave his body like that? Well, there's only one answer, and that is that he was Krishna conscious, fully Krishna conscious, and he knew what was going to happen. He knew. Yeah, she's... Our local saint is giving the... Well, there's a lot of local saints around here. But anyway, one of our local saints is giving the answer so that we can get the Bhagavatam. So the real liberated souls, they're not... And that was also in part of the verses that we read today. The real liberated souls, they're not just concerned with the souls that are there at their time. They're concerned with the souls from now on. So he had not only that, but he had the power, as will be described, or also a little later, to counteract the curse. He was very powerful. He was a pure devotee of Krishna. He wasn't just a king. Krishna appeared to him in the womb and protected him. Actually, his body was burnt by that Brahmastra, and Krishna personally gave him a new body right there on the spot, inside the womb. So he was not an ordinary person. So a person who is actually, this is also mixed in with all of this, is the system, the natural system of the Vedic culture. Even the great kings, the great sages, the great kings who were sages, the Rajarshis, when it came time for them to go to the forest to get free from the detachment and detached from material, attachment, then they would go to the forest. They would just give it up. Give up the kingdom, give up the family, give up the wealth, give up the power, influence, what other people thought of him, didn't mind. Rishabdev, he gave it up and he became a wandering mendicant and just acted like a mad person. Because that's the system. In Vedic culture, practically everyone, especially the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas, these are the leading personalities, the twice-born personalities. They would act according to the proper way for the benefit of others. So he was actually, on all levels doing the right thing.
So then I was thinking.
So then Krishna Kripa is now going to think for us.
That each devotee that comes to Krishna consciousness.
That each devotee who comes to Krishna consciousness.
Through all this time, all these years.
Through all this time, all these years.
Are always very, very special, yet.
Are always very special.
Difficulty seeing that.
Yet we have such difficulty seeing that. Well, that's our problem, isn't it?
Yes. Mine. For sure.
We have to become free from ignorance and passion to see. And even when it says in the Gita, I was just reading it the other day, 2 days ago, I read day before yesterday, I read the 18th chapter of the Gita. And there it says that there's no one in the material world, from Brahma down to an ant, who is not influenced by the three modes of material nature at some time or another. So it's not, even liberated souls experience, especially in the Kali Yuga, but in the material world, a tinge of the modes of material nature. And the other thing is that in previous ages, we just heard about this, how in the Kali Yuga, due to the increase in ignorance and passion, even the vegetables and the fruits and the grains and the water, and it's all contaminated. So we're eating those things, and that's how our bodies are created, and our subtle minds also. Interesting side point. Gopi Puranadana Prabhu read in one of the Vedas that the subtle body also contains water. So water is all pervasive in the subtle and gross bodies. There's a form of water in the subtle body. So it's so essential. So when we don't have proper water, then it makes a huge difference. And like it said, memory, power of so even the great personalities, the external exhibition of that greatness doesn't come out the same as it did before. Therefore, it's also hard to see. But even if we were capable of seeing, the activities of an actual completely pure devotee are very difficult to understand. I mean, to your original point, in the in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, there's a verse that says that sometimes very advanced souls will purposely do something wrong, purposely, in order to show what not to do, in order to show the example of what not to do and how to respond to it. Therefore, it's very difficult to understand the activities of liberated souls. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I have to protect my voice. Hare Krishna, everyone. And all of you out in cyberspace, welcome again. We hope that you had a nice time tonight. and we hope there were no glitches. I'm hearing from my techie, Dr. Robert is the techie, and he says that there's no glitches today, so everybody could both see and hear everything. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Parikshit Maharaj ki jai, Shri Sutta Goswami ki jai, Srila Vyasadev ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.